prophetic literature in the Hebrew Bible often arrives through thunderous intervention, fire on Carmel, parting of the sea, or the voice from the whirlwind. Isaiah 26 presents a world convulsing under human hubris, where the lofty city is brought low to the dust. Verse 6 describes the feet of the poor treading upon its ruins, followed by the promise that those who dwell in the dust will awake and sing. Standard interpretations frame this trampling as a military conquest. In this view, the oppressed seize the reins of power and crush their former masters, a reading supported by older sources like the Geneva Study Bible. This interpretation requires the poor to transform into soldiers. However, the specific Hebrew vocabulary used to describe these people suggests a different reality. The landscape described here is the aftermath. The poor move through these ruins not as a conquering army, but with persistent survival. They act as the gleaners of history, carefully navigating the debris to find the sustenance necessary for life. This scavenger hermeneutic views the poor as those navigating the collapse of an imperial order. They walk over the ruins to survive. This perspective aligns with Gustavo Gutiérrez's focus on the non-person, the individual whom the prevailing social order refuses to recognize. To Gutiérrez, the underside of history belongs to those living in the shadows of dominant systems. Walter Brueggemann identifies this dominant system as the royal consciousness. It is an epistemology of numbness, a state of mind designed to hoard resources and deny the reality of death. Viewing Isaiah 26 through the lens of the scavenger changes the understanding of resurrection. When the dwellers in the dust awake, the act is a divine reclamation of fragments, a Messiah who descends into the landfill of history to ensure nothing is lost. The lofty city, or Kyria Niskava, serves as the manifestation of human autonomy. It is built on high as a spatial designation of insulation from the agrarian peasantry below. This diagram shows the semiotics of the city. The vertical system of extraction concentrates grain, oil, and labor in the center, creating the height of the elite. These walls serve as epistemological barriers, designed to keep out the cries of the poor and mortality. Isaiah 26:5 describes the dismantling of this vertical axis. Yahweh lays it low to the ground and casts it to the dust. The repetition of the verb shafel, to lay low, marks the totality of the collapse. In biblical theology, the dust, adafar, is the place of origin and return. It is the primal element of human fragility, defined in the 2nd chapter of Genesis. This collapse creates a spatial leveling. While the elite encounter the dust as a catastrophe, the poor encounter it as their familiar habitat. The vertical hierarchy is flattened, forcing the royal consciousness to confront the mortality it was built to deny. The text uses two Hebrew terms for these actors, ani and dalim. Ani refers to those economically distressed by exploitation. Dalim counts from a root meaning to hang low or languish. It describes a peasantry physically depleted by subsistence living. These thin ones are the emaciated and the exhausted. Their physical state contrasts with the idea of a violent military trampling. The verb used here is ramas. While it can describe crushing enemies, it is also the generic verb for walking or roaming over the earth. In verse 6, the city is already down. The poor are shuffling over the debris. The focus is on their steps, a rhythmic, slow movement. They walk over palaces and treasuries because rubble is now the topography of their survival. This is an act of desacralization. By reducing imperial monuments to mere matter, the scavenger proves the lofty city was never divine. It was a pile of stones arranged by hubris, now rearranged by the feet of the hungry. The legitimacy of the scavenger is rooted in the Mosaic law. Leviticus 19 commands landowners not to harvest the edge of their fields and to leave the gleanings behind. This diagram contrasts the efficiency of the lofty city with the intentional inefficiency of the Levitical code. The law mandates waste, requiring the farmer to leave profit in the field for the scavenger to gather. In this system, gleanings belong to the poor. The moment a stalk falls, it ceases to be the property of the farmer. This mandates the agency of the poor, who must walk the field to feed themselves. Ruth is the quintessential practitioner of this law. A Moabite widow and a non-person, she survives by picking up leftover grain in the fields of Boaz. From this act of scavenging, the lineage of the Messiah is secured. Scavenging the ruins of a collapsed empire is the urban equivalent of gleaning the field. The poor enter the ruins to reclaim resources, acting as those seeking reparations in the form of survival. In Isaiah 26:19, the imagery shifts. The sociological act of walking on ruins becomes the eschatological promise of rising from ruins. Genesis 3 defines human existence through sweat, the painful labor of extracting life from a resistant earth. It is the energy used by the lofty city to overcome the curse of the dust. Yet regardless of the effort, all return to that dust. Isaiah introduces a counterforce, dew, tal. In the arid Near East, dew appears silently and without human labor. It is a gift, not a wage. Like the manna that fell with the dew in the wilderness, it is bread gathered from the ground. Isaiah speaks of the tal orot, the dew of lights. This liquid light falls on the nevelah, or the carcass. It reanimates the biological waste of history, forcing the earth to cast out the dead it tried to hide. Resurrection operates as an act of divine gleaning. God collects the dead from the dust, just as the poor glean manna from the dew. It is not an achievement of the city, but a grace falling upon the dwellers in the dust. Ultimately, this model forms a scavenger Christology. Jesus represents the scavenger consciousness, moving from the high place of heaven to the dust of earth. Philippians 2 describes this kenosis, or self-emptying. Jesus takes the form of a servant, becoming a dull with no place to lay his head. He is a wanderer scavenging for shelter. His earthly ministry is a scavenger hunt. He goes to the dumps of society, to the lepers and the demoniacs in the tombs, finding treasure in what the religious elite considered trash. He calls the sinners the waste of the social system. At the crucifixion, the lofty city casts Jesus out into the landfill. He is executed at Golgotha, the place of the skull, becoming a nevelah outside the gate. The resurrection is the ultimate reclamation of the earth. The dew of lights raises Jesus from the dust. As the first fruits, he is the first ballooning of the harvest, a promise that the rest of the dead will be gathered in the same way. After feeding the 5,000, Jesus commands his followers to gather up the fragments left over so that nothing may be lost. This contrasts with the modern culture of waste. While industrial systems produce disposable goods and disposable people, the kingdom of God ensures every crumb is precious. The Eucharist is a meal of fragments. The church is a community of scavengers who gather around a broken body to find life, treading the floor of the sanctuary to receive the gleanings of grace. The church acts as a refugia, a biological pocket of life surviving in a devastated landscape. It is a scavenger camp in the ruins of empire, where the dew is already falling and the bread is shared among the hungry. The feet of the poor teach that we do not conquer the city. We outlast it. The lofty city is destined for dust, but the dwellers in the dust are resilient. They walk with the steps of the needy, gleaning grace in the margins, and testifying that even in the rubble, the dew is falling.